So what makes me cranky about The Batman? Brooding. If we could cut a few of the interminable scenes where Robert Pattinson just stares at the camera, perhaps this movie wouldn't need to be 3 hours long. Or we might at least not feel every single minute of that 3-hour runtime. Look, there are many things to love about The Batman, but its length is definitely not among them. The last time I found myself wondering, dear God, when is this going to be over like this, was Zack Snyder's Justice League. Which is kind of ironic because Matt Reeves has effectively rebooted that character from that universe in a movie with pretty much all of the same flaws as before. He just comes at them from a slightly different route, which fortunately doesn't make you want to kill yourself by the end the way Snyder movies do. Whereas Snyder washed out all the colors and turned all the heroes into morose and miserable douchebags, Reeves just has them all stuck brooding, at night, in the rain, all the time. To the point that all the characters seem to talk in the same hushed, gravelly voice, as if each of them was auditioning to play Batman 2. It's never a good sign when you find yourself thinking, wait, why are they whispering? There's nobody else around. Even Andy Serkis's Alfred is built on gruff stoicism. Gone is all the sardonic wit that has made the character so lovable until now, and in its place is another throaty whisper lamenting how everything sucks. It's very reminiscent of the no levity of any kind policy that permeated the Snyderverse films, only it seems less like Reeves hates humor and more that he thinks the Lego Batman's untitled self-portrait was a template for the character rather than a parody. Darkness, more darkness, the opposite of light. It's like the Dark Knight moniker has become a challenge to these filmmakers now. Their Dark Knight has to be the darkest night, both literally and figuratively. So with the Batman, we have black on black and quiet on silence. Even the one bright spot in the Snyderverse got jettisoned for this flick, namely Hans Zimmer. Zimmer's scores were the real superheroes of the DC Extended Universe, doing everything in their power to rescue us from the dumpster fire on the screen by making it seem as epic and moving as Snyder fans believe it is. With The Batman, we instead have a score by Michael Giacchino that does the movie absolutely no favors. And really, it only serves to reinforce the bleak monotony of everything else. Most of the time, it just sounds like generic background music, and the one notable recurring theme for the new Batman inspires neither terror nor excitement. It's just ambient noise. Then there's the pacing. Whereas Snyder dragged everything out with slow motion, Reeves does it by just never cutting anything. He just doesn't seem to trust his audience to get the gist of things unless he sits on the same point for an eternity. Scenes that would normally be edited down to just the key points simply run on and on to show every extraneous thing that happened just in case you don't quite get it yet. There are several sequences where we're just looking through the eyes of a character as they watch something else happening, which basically consists of some heavy breathing noises as we wait for the thing to happen and then watch the aftermath of the thing happening. This, of course, drives the pacing of the film way, way down to the point that even the action sequences that are littered throughout the movie do very little to generate any kind of forward momentum. There's nothing wrong with them per se. They're shot well enough, they're interesting enough, but they don't do much to change the pace of the film, and certainly have very little impact on the tone, which is just flat throughout. So the longer it went on, the more I felt like I was watching one of those extremely padded Netflix crime dramas rather than an actual Batman movie. And given the plot, it seems like The Batman would have been much better served as a dramatic series rather than a movie. Then instead of taking its time staring at us, it could take its time with the mystery elements served up by the Riddler. The subplots to bring in Zoe Kravitz's version of Selena Kyle and the random Colin Farrell Penguin stuff would feel like a much more natural expansion of the world over time, because they'd be supporting threads to a main, overarching series plot, rather than diversions from the main plot of a movie. Instead, that stuff feels like it belongs on the cutting room floor, because it's neither necessary to move the story along, nor developed well enough to justify its inclusion. And ultimately, it all comes at the expense of the main villain. I mean, there's a period of this movie where everyone just forgets the Riddler exists for a while. That's usually fine for an episode of a TV show, but it really kills the tension in a movie. The same can be said of the Batman-Catwoman romance stuff they shoehorned in here. It's too rushed to really work, and it gets by largely on everyone's pre-existing knowledge of who they are, rather than any natural chemistry between the actors or characters. There's no real reason for them to want to hook up here other than we know that they've always had a thing in the comics. And it should be noted that this new Catwoman has to deliver our obligatory white privilege lecture, since we can't very well have entertainment that doesn't take a moment to relay the message, now can we? I mean, Bruce Wayne only watched his parents get murdered in front of him as a kid, leaving him to be raised by his butler, in an incident that so psychologically scarred him that he's decided to go out every night dressed up like a bat to terrorize criminals. If that's not privilege, I don't know what is. Stupid, spoiled little rich kid choosing to destroy his body by spending every night waging a one-man war on the kind of crime that most affects the poorest citizens of Gotham, rather than redistributing his wealth through the city's demonstrably corrupt government and charitable organizations like a true ally would. Anyway, I did say that there were things to love about this flick, and the main one is actually the portrayal of the Batman. This is probably the most comic book accurate version of the character we've seen in live action, and it's nice to see the world's greatest detective do some actual detective work for once. We're also not forced to watch his parents die again, and we don't need to ground him in reality this time, so there's no time wasted trying to explain how all of his stuff works. It just does. Most of the nitpicks I had about things like him stomping around in combat boots or letting tons of random civilians see him in full view can be hand-waved by the fact that this is very early on in his crime-fighting career, so he's still getting the hang of it. I especially appreciated that this is the first time I didn't look at the guy in the suit and instantly recognize the actor underneath. This may just be due to the fact that we don't spend a whole lot of time with Bruce Wayne, so we don't see Pattinson's face too often, but it really helps sell the notion that Bruce and Bats can interact with the same person and not immediately get identified. All of these other Batmen had like really distinct lower halves of their face, so you look at them and it's like, that's George Clooney. That's Ben Affleck. That's Michael Keaton. With Pattinson, you just see a guy in a suit. More importantly, unlike the last live-action incarnation of Batman, this one doesn't go around brutally murdering people all the time. And he's up against a villain whose motive actually matches his methodology and who doesn't get by on an insanely convenient series of coincidences. This Riddler's still a little bit too jokery overall, but it's certainly better than some of the other stuff we've had to put up with recently. Unfortunately, it's just not enough to rescue this from being a long, flat slog through the dark that'll put you to sleep if you let it. Like I said, it would really work better as a 6 to 8 episode miniseries, especially if they sprinkled in a little bit of levity for good measure. So as far as I'm concerned, you should probably wait to catch the Batman in a matinee, since that's your best chance of actually staying awake all the way to the end. Make sure to take a bathroom break up front and bring some snacks though, because the time watching it will most definitely not fly by. Anyway, that's what I thought about the Batman. Tell me what you thought in the comments, and if you'd like to help me continue to fight movie crimes, you can hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I have something to complain about.